Here's a picture of my team. This was the Mohawk Valley Comets team, my last year there. And this is where Slapshot came from, and a bunch of those guys played. We used to call where everybody wanted to go the Big Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Where we were in the North American Hockey League in Slapshot was the Crab Apple. And players would bitch. It was a culture shock. We had number 1 draft picks that came from the WHA. These kids they were bonus babies. They had money, they had cars, they had pretty young wives. We had guys that were career journeymen, age 35, trying to hang on for dear life. We had guys that had played in college. In college hockey, you play at Cornell or you play at Harvard. You play 1 or 2 games a week. It's kind of an easy life. You practice the rest of the time. You go to class. You play, you only travel to Boston University or Boston College or Vermont. You're not traveling 9 hours one way. So we had all those guys coming. We had 20-year-old players from junior hockey. We had a guy who had a master's degree from McGill University in Montreal. He wanted to see if he could make it in the NHL. He came and played. But the culture of that dressing room was so diverse and so weird. And we found out one of our players had been in prison on a felony assault charge.
Wow.
So we just had a lot of unique and really diverse guys. The one thing that was unique, though, is that WHA hardly took any of our players up. It's different than it is today where the NHL, where the Anaheim Ducks call guys up from San Diego almost on a weekly basis. Our guys came here, and for the most part, they stayed here the whole season. We had a New York Ranger draft pick. I think it was a second-round draft pick. Had been playing in Toledo in the IHL. They sent him to Mohawk Valley, which is kind of a step down. He drove all night through a snowstorm. He got to our practice rink, which was an old cement barn. He got back in his car and he told his wife, I am not playing here. He drove all the way back through the snow back to Toledo. He eventually wound up joining us, turned out to do well. The players' wives, you talk about culture shock for players. How about these young girls coming with their husbands, or in some cases their boyfriends, and coming to the lower minor leagues, and they hated it. We had one player's wife. Being in a pub and a bar, that's how you killed time.
Right.
And that happened all the time. We had one player's wife that she started to refer to our city, Utica, New York. She referred to it as Uterus, New York. And that made the newspapers. And that era, not only were they coming from different hockey backgrounds, they came from different culture backgrounds. We had some kids from Quebec, and that was in the 70s, right in the middle of the French separatist movement in the province of Quebec. And these French Canadian kids would sit there and argue with the Canadian kids from Western Canada about why Quebec should be a private, separate country from the rest of Canada. And all this stuff was going on. And the bar scenes and the locker room, mind games, it's all true in the movie. We had a defenseman by the name of John Brophy, very famous minor league player, became coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. John Brophy played 19 years in that league. 19 years of hamburgers and drinking beer.
Wow.
And another guy by the name of Jim Red Eye Hay, a former Indian who played in that league. He was a hatchet man.
Well, how much were the players and getting paid? I mean, you probably were working for peanuts too.
Yeah, they were getting paid $300 to $400 a week. But that's not bad money back in the 1970s.
That's true. Yeah.
But there was only a 6-month contract because you only paid during the course of the season. But they were all looking, obviously to get to the Big Apple, to get to the show.